Welcome back, everyone. Let's grab a seat. Thank you. So we're ready for our cruise ship discussion, which will be riveting. So without further ado, let's welcome to stage our panel moderator, Marla Dukharan. Marla is a well-respected Caribbean economist and advisor and an independent non-executive member of the board of directors at RF Bank and Trust. Marla.
Thank you.
Joining Marla is the Honourable Kenneth Bryan, Deputy Premier and Minister for Tourism and Ports, as well as Minister for Social Development and Innovation in the Cayman Islands. A former journalist and political assistant to the Premier, he has been a Member of Parliament since 2017 and previously served as Chairman of the Caribbean Tourism Organization. With a background in public service, Minister Bryan remains a dedicated leader, actively shaping regional tourism and social development. Next on the panel, please welcome Joey Gaskins Jr., a seasoned public affairs and strategic communications expert currently working at Disney Cruise Line as their public affairs director. In this capacity, he played a key role in the development of Disney Lookout Key at Lighthouse Point in the Bahamas. A trusted advisor, Joey has spoken widely on public policy and social issues, serving as a lecturer at the University of the Bahamas and Network News contributor. Finally, rounding out our conversation, we welcome to the stage Johan Moxham, partner at Lainston International Management. As a community activist and concerned citizen, Johan played a prominent role as one of the founding members and leaders of the cruise port referendum CPR Cayman Group. The group successfully challenged and halted the government's proposed multi-million-dollar cruise berthing facility project. Welcome, Johan. Let's give our whole panel a warm welcome. Thank you. Over to you, Marla.
Thank you, Gerhard. Thanks for the introduction. Gosh, I look so sunburnt in that picture. What is up with that? Good afternoon, everybody. And thank you for coming back after lunch and the break. We know sometimes it's tempting, especially Friday afternoon, right? So thanks for joining us for this discussion. Of course, this is a very important topic for Cayman, not just based on the fact that you have a referendum on April 30th on this issue, but because this is a serious socioeconomic issue for many countries in the Caribbean. We just had the Bahamas version of this conference 2 days ago in the Bahamas, and of course the Bahamas is the country with the most exposure and dependence on cruise tourism in the Caribbean, and Cayman has somewhere in the middle, whereas my country, Trinidad and Tobago, we have very few cruise ships visiting. So there's a whole spectrum, and there's pros and cons, of course, in this industry. So we have these three very handsome gentlemen this afternoon to talk about this topic and talk about, in particular, in Cayman, I mean, when you think about tourism on the whole, every single country on this planet has a tourism industry, whether they like it or not. Even you heard discussion about North Korea being the most isolated country on earth. Even North Korea has a tourism industry because there are people who want to go and visit North Korea. The point being that it's not a question of should we have a tourism sector or a cruise tourism sector by extension, because it will probably exist even if we didn't want it to, like North Korea. The question is, how should it look in terms of meeting the goals and the vision that you have for your country? What are the needs of your people, and how best do we meet those needs with this industry? And that's what we want to get out of the discussion. We will have three very different perspectives on that. So I want to start with the Honorable Deputy Premier. How would you suggest would be the best way that this industry should look to benefit Cayman to the max?
Good afternoon, everybody. Happy Friday. Marla, thank you so much for being the moderator today. Your experience here will definitely give a strong insight to this very important topic. In respect to cruise tourism, I think that it's obvious that from my comments publicly that I think we have to have the relevant infrastructure to sustain the market. I think there is a question about what is the carrying capacity of the Cayman Islands, because that's what I see is the biggest fear within the Cayman Islands, to not have the negative elements that come along with cruise, whether it's traffic, overcrowding on the beaches, environmental concerns and effects. But I think that there is a place in between where we can have best of both worlds. And I think we can do that with the necessary infrastructure that coexist with the trends and the direction of the cruise industry, particularly with larger ships. One of my biggest concerns for the industry right now is the continued decline that we're seeing, and the makeup of the industry and business owners and employees that are in the industry. And if the decline continues based on the trends of where the industry is going, what that will then mean to businesses, income, revenue for government, and more importantly, on the lives of the Caymanian people, because in cruise tourism is the largest out of the two stay over in cruise tourism is where we have more Caymanians involved. So it's not even about in growing the industry, but sustaining the industry. I mean, we're coming from 2018 when we had 1.9 million, now to just over 1 million. That's close to a 50% drop in less than 10 years. And it's continued to project to decline. So I believe that what we need to do is get a cruise facility, a pier. But I do agree with some of the comments that I've heard publicly about doing a carrying capacity test, also deciding where is best suited for it. I think that the good people of the Cayman Islands recognize a lot of the details of what's happening in the industry now, and I hope that they will vote yes in the referendum, so the next administration can start doing those analysis to then come to the best conclusion on how to move forward. But it's about maintaining what we have, because so many people have invested millions of dollars, all their life, studies, investments, borrowings in this field. And cruise is truly about wealth creation, not job creation, because in the hotel stay-over industry, most of these hotels are owned by, corporate giants.
Yeah.
It's not Caymanian owned. So rather than giving a Caymanian a job at a hotel, you can give Caymanian wealth opportunity by creating a small business and over time being a part of the owner of an industry. And that's why I'm so heavily supportive of the cruise industry and its survival. But I won't take up too much about that. I'll give others a talk and chime in from there.
Well, before I move on to Joey, though, you mentioned wealth creation as opposed to job creation, and I absolutely agree with you. I think one of the things we've done badly in the Caribbean is having enough local content in the tourism product, and local content meaning also local ownership. And you're right. The largest assets, I know, Joey, you talked about this on the panel in Bahamas. What is the likelihood of a Caribbean person owning a cruise ship? Almost zero, but we can own the other businesses that serve the tourism sector. And you mentioned the decline in the arrivals has meant that these businesses have suffered.
Correct.
Do you have any data that you can share with us on that specifically? Whether
And the decline or?
no, on the businesses that have suffered. We know the numbers, the decline in numbers of arrivals, but
Yes.
Do we have any data, for example, on how many businesses closing down or businesses who are struggling financially because of the decline?
Well, I mean, if you go in Georgetown, you can just hear the echoing of the screams every day from the businesses. But more importantly, if you want the data itself, the government requested the Economics and Statistics Office to do an analysis just last year in 2024, and it's the economic impact on cruise tourism in the Cayman Islands, which is also available on the port website, as well as the Tourism DOT website and the Ministry of Tourism website. And it goes into those details of where we've seen the declines, but we've also seen indications of shops closing down. One prominent one that we're all aware of is the Hard Rock Hotel, which is a well-known, established international brand, which would obviously have the specialists and advisors to look at the market and say to them and advise them whether they should stay in the field or not. And I'm almost certain what ended up happening is their advisors, from a brand perspective, said, listen, it's not going to be feasible for you if Cayman doesn't have the proper facilities to maintain the traffic. And they saw the numbers, and rather than waiting around to figure out if we're going to do this, cut their losses before things got so bad that they were in further debt. And that's what I'm worried about, because some companies are not going to have that luxury because they've invested all their life in it. And we are trying to predict what we see as the inevitable on the further decline before it happens. I mean, nobody's been able to refute the fact that the decline is happening and it's going to continue to happen. Matter of fact, the report says that 5.9% decline, is it 5.9 or 5.2? Basically 5% decline every year moving forward for the next 5 years. I don't think the country can afford that. And mainly because the truth is we can find a balanced approach that is environmentally friendly, that is cost effective once we do the analysis. And I think that I'm hoping that I'm a part of the next administration that comes into a government with a successful vote, yes, in favor, but the first 6 months we do these analysis about where the best location is, what's the best engineering available, what funding model we're going to use, and deliver it. Because I don't think personally that we should move it from the location, but we can ask the public and with public consultation on that. Because any other location than where it is virgin territory. And you're going to still have the negative environmental impacts there, but also the depths are best suited in its current location. So I think that there is a happy place. It's not about increasing the numbers, because trust me, I've driven through the traffic on really heavy days back in 2018. But the government, even from then, was planning for that, for different roadways and arterial roadways from the eastern side of downtown, to plan for that, to get around those negative things. But also, we can increase the value proposition of cruise passengers, because if you have an appropriate facility where people can embark and disembark off of a pier, you can get them to stay on shore a lot longer. Right now, we have a value viewpoint of $119 per passenger based on a 4-hour on shore. If we can increase that by 2 more hours, that means we can increase it by another 50% per passenger spend. And these larger ships are seeing more valuable customers that spend higher money. So I think we're missing an opportunity, and the fears that people are having can be mitigated.
And on that point, more value and better quality.
Yes.
I will now switch to Joey, who represents the Disney Cruise Line brand, but also he is very passionate about his country and doing what's right for his country. So he's, in a unique position of having one foot in both worlds. And so, Joey, tell us from your perspective, what do you think and how do you think Cayman can best benefit from this sector?
Yeah, I'll use the example of Disney Lookout Key at Lighthouse Point, which was a controversial project in the Bahamas at the start of it, and I was not supportive of it. So that I work for Disney now is something. And some people were really unhappy that I had gone to work for Disney after the approval. But the reason why I wasn't happy about the idea of Disney taking Lighthouse Point is because, let's be honest, cruise does not have the best reputation across the world right now. You know what I mean?
Well, cruise is how COVID came to the Caribbean, right?
Well, let's not go there. Let's not revisit that part of the past. But I do think that, as an industry, we have recognized that around the world, there are cities and places that are finding it difficult to contend with us, right? That just is what it is. And I didn't want more of that for the Bahamas. When I got the call to, hey, can you help? I was running a firm at the time that specialized in difficult foreign direct investment projects in the Bahamas. We worked with them to move approvals, get things done, navigate the media landscape. And I decided that I did not want to work with Disney at the time. And my senior vice president now put me in contact with some people in South Eleuthera, where Lookout Key is, who had not had investment for 4 decades. So North Eleuthera had boomed, right? Harbor Island, I think, has more billionaires per square mile than anywhere else in the world. And South Eleuthera, 110 miles south, had felt nothing. And Disney was the first real opportunity. And so I said, you know what? If these people feel like they want to have this investment, it's very important to them, but we have to do it the right way. And we worked with Disney to build the development around 4 particular pillars, right? So environment, so conserving the environment, celebrating Bahamian culture, strengthening the local community, as well as with culture, environment, and sustainable economic opportunities, right? And to the Deputy Premier's point, not just jobs, but sustainable economic opportunities, which for us was a catch-all for both ownership opportunities as well as employment, because not everybody wants to be an entrepreneur either, right? And for a community that hasn't had investment for 40 years, jobs are very important as well. And I think we've done a good job. And part of Disney doing a good job was investing in Bahamian professionals to help build out the programs, whether it is introducing them to artists, Bahamian musicians, Bahamian actors, voice actors, to build the experience, to literally include Bahamian art and culture in the design of our facilities as entertainment options, but also on the corporate social responsibility side to give to junior Junkanoo. So if you know the Bahamas, you know Junkanoo is our thing, right? It is our biggest cultural celebration, and we use junior Junkanoo as a way to ensure that we have a pipeline of Junkanoos that can continue this culture from schools. And so we fund those programs because we know that we want to preserve this thing that our guests have come to love, that we've introduced them to at Disney, but also that is really important for the Bahamian community. On the conservation side, we focused on the construction, ensuring that we did a 2-year baseline study for the environment. We tagged birds. We're doing the first land crab tagging program in the Bahamas.
Wow.
And land crab we eat, but it's also a very important part of the local ecosystem. We hired 2 Bahamian biologists to lead the conservation program. And we use that data to build a facility that we think fits within sustainable development, which has 2 parts, right? Both sustainable and development. So yes, development is important, but how can we do it in a sustainable way? No dredging. We built a trestled pier, the only of its kind in the Bahamas. We laid limestone along the trestles to create fish highways to allow for fish to pass through uninhibited. We measured the currents of the water to ensure that we weren't inhibiting that. We did special things around marine mammals to ensure that they weren't harmed. So we invested a lot of energy in that, but also the construction workers and our operations staff, they clean beaches. We fund conservation programs in school, again, connecting the corporate responsibility to the operations, right? And you can see this kind of pattern throughout the entirety of the way that we work. For sustainable opportunities, we started before we laid the first brick at Disney Lookout Key, investing in local businesses, understanding the local economies, and realizing that there were very serious obstacles to small Bahamian businesses connecting in substantive ways to our operations so that they can make money. Because it's one thing to say, we want to invite Bahamian businesses to become a part of this program. It's quite another thing when they have global liability insurance that they can't get over that hurdle, right? When they don't have resources like funding or the technical assistance that they need to meet the standards that we have at Disney Cruise Line when it comes to experiences. And so we created programs around bridging those gaps. And I'm going on and on, I feel like a lecturer, but it was a very thoughtful approach to the way that we did this, because for us at Disney, reputation is very important. In fact, I think in a lot of ways, reputation is more important than the physical assets on the water. If people believe that Disney is destroying the environment, destroying the local culture, not giving people an opportunity, they won't sail with us, right?
And they won't go to Disney World.
And they won't go to Disney World. And that's the other thing. I mean, we're not just a cruise line. They won't come to the movie theaters to see our movies. They won't. And that is a very real risk for us, right? And so from our perspective, we build this thing, right, that we believe looked at the issues, and there were issues at the beginning, but sought to mitigate them as best as possible. And a lot of that was done in consultation with the local population.
So if you have to do it right. And it sounds like Disney has the formula to get it done right. Because I remember you mentioning to me you all had a petition against you doing this of 400,000 signatures.
Yeah.
More than the population of the Bahamas.
And a lot of it was from outside of the Bahamas as well, which was something that, as a Bahamian for me, made me take a breath, right? Yes, we do appreciate when people can see the beauty of the Bahamas. In fact, you can see it from space, right? The astronauts talk about it all the time. And at the very same time, there are people who are destitute in communities who are looking for opportunity. And the question is, how do we strike the balance between, the very real concerns of people who oppose the project? Nobody is ignoring those real concerns, and the very real opportunities that can be made for local inhabitants, right? And the reason why my senior vice president, and then at the time, the president of Disney Cruise Line, was able to take me, a skeptic, sitting in the Capitol, making some good money, working with international investors to move their projects. The reason why they were able to connect me to these people in the community was because they had spent months ahead of time drinking sans beer, sitting under Poinciana trees, engaging with these locals, and creating a project that that local community felt like it wanted. And when it came time for the government to engage with the local community there, they were supportive. So no matter what we got from abroad, that local community was very supportive of the project.
Amazing. So I'm going to switch now to Johan. So especially given what you've heard, and I know that your view is very much steeped in sustainability and getting it right. So let's hear what your thoughts are, Johan, on the how.
Well, I think it's important to state from the outset that the positions that are going to be shared here represent that of the CPR group. It's a collection of all types of Caymanians, every color, shape, size, every generation. We were successful in driving and getting a people's-initiated referendum in force. We collected something like 6,500, nearly 7,000 signatures that triggered the people's-initiated referendum back in 2019. So this isn't just a disgruntled middle-aged person talking out of the side of my head. I represent a collection of passionate, patriotic Caymanians of every type of Cayman you could think of, multi-generational, new Caymanian, old Caymanian, young Caymanian, male, female. The sustainability element is important, but I think we got to get back to the very beginning. Details and information is more important than anything else, because if you don't have the right data, if you don't have the information, how can anybody realistically expect voters to go to the polls on April 30th and say, do you support cruise berthing infrastructure? That's the wrong question. We need information as a country, as voters, in order to understand what this looks like. And the reason why I say that at the outset is because in 2019, when the plan was put together and the Verdant Isle groups consisted of Carnival Cruise Line and Royal Caribbean and some Caymanian participation in the form of McAlpine as the construction partners, that project was guesstimated to cost CI between 200 and 250 million. Now, if you go 4 years, 5 years on, cost of money, inflation, everything, you're now looking at potentially a $400 to $500 million project. This will be potentially the largest, most environmentally impactful, largest capital works project in the history of the Cayman Islands. So before we get to the stage of, do you support something, we need to know what that thing is, what it looks like, what it will potentially cost. Details matter. Yeah. And that's my thing. I read everything. I'm not an expert like these guys. I just read everything that I can, and I try to bring a common sense approach to how I speak and how I present things. I drew the short straw because everyone is intimidated by the minister who...
I thought it was me they were intimidated by.
Not at all. Not at all. The minister's heart is in the right place. The minister is passionate. He's been enthusiastic. He's represented us well. I say that in my personal capacity. We're all very proud of him. But let's get back to the meat of the matter. You cannot expect for any logical human beings to come to the conclusion that we can support something when no information of any substance has been shared with us, especially when you start throwing around numbers. Let's say it's 400, let's say it's 500 million. Now, weigh that up against the contribution of cruise tourism to the Cayman pot. I'm going to say this, having been in financial services for the better part of over 22 years. If you are in financial services, if you are a manager, an owner, a director, a senior level executive, and the Cayman Islands government is prepared to spend that type of money on a project that represents or could generate maybe 10% GDP for you, we need to be doing something else with our lives, because the bread and butter of the Cayman Islands economy is the financial services industry. It represents 65% of the GDP. It hires over 7,000 people. I can get the stats from Steve McIntosh. Caymanians at every level in the rung are involved in industry. And for us to contemplate such a massive commitment to cruise without understanding all the details, especially because details matter, and you're looking at people in this room who are from financial services. Financial services have not been given any rebates, any discounts, any concessions, anything. And there's nobody in government that is prepared to inject or come with a pilot program to say, because you represent this much, we are prepared to help you in some way, shape, or form. So it's important to understand that it isn't a question of not supporting cruise or not wanting cruise. It's just the priorities and the expenditure that will be associated with a project that nobody in this room and none of the voters know anything about.
I appreciate that. And yes, there is no information in the question being asked at the referendum. But let me ask you
Nobody claps, so I think I'm in trouble.
They didn't clap for us being handsome either, so it's like
okay, from your perspective, we have a cruise industry already, right? So, like I said at the outset, it's not a question of if, but how. Let's forget about the referendum for now. You've made some valid points on that, but with respect to the cruise sector, how would you like it to look? If you were the premier and you could have made a decision in May of this year following an election, what would you say is the optimal way to structure this industry that would serve this country in the best way?
The Deputy Premier and I have had this conversation, and to his credit, I think it's important you go back to basics of acknowledging that cruise tourism plays a role in employing Caymanians in the economy and opportunities for Caymanians. I think you got to start at the very beginning of what do we want that product to look like without having to spend $400, $500 million. Right? So that means involving all the relevant stakeholders. I'll say this, the fact that we have a tendering service, it's Caribbean Marine Service, they've been providing that service for the better part of 40, 50 years. It was started by two gentlemen, two Caymanians, Atlee Bodden and Adrian Briggs. The fact that there is no conversation with the service provider that takes people from ship to shore, back to ship, that has to be the starting point, because if the problem is we don't like the tenders, they've invested all of this money into it, and I'm not speaking for them, I'm not their agent, I'm not anything, I'm just saying you got to start with the key cog in the machinery to understand government wants us to have a particular type of tendering service. I don't know what that looks like because I've never captained a boat and I could barely fish. I'm one of the only locals that can't fish, so don't hold out against me. But you got to start with having the conversation with key stakeholders, getting them in a room, first by themselves, giving them, here's what we want, here's what we need, here's what we're looking for, and then you just go through the list of key stakeholders to understand how we fix the issues with cruise tourism together, right? I think if you put 10 people in a room, there's a lot of emotion, there's a lot of greed, there's a lot of self-interest, so you're almost better having stakeholder engagement on a one-to-one basis with the minister and his team and the key stakeholders, and then coming up with almost a SWOT analysis of what is important. Unless you're doing that, you're just going through the motions, because if you put 10 people, if you put vendors in town, if you put taxi drivers, if you put shop owners or real estate owners in town, everybody has their own different angle that they're playing. But the idea is to have an experience that will save us from making really bad decisions like a $500 million cruise berthing facility that
Marla,
could potentially put us over.
I have to interrupt him there with the he constantly throws out 400. He started off at 300 million.
No, that was
He went to
2020.
400. One second. Went to 400. Now it's to 500 with no facts whatsoever in respect to the.
I should be in government then. That's exactly what I should do.
Okay,
If
okay.
facts don't matter, I should be elected.
Okay, so thank you for making that point. But yes, we don't know the number. And I would imagine, correct me if I'm wrong, Minister, I would imagine that let's say you have a yes vote at the referendum, and there is a new government, and this new government says, you know what, we had a yes vote. It's non-binding. Don't you then, I would imagine this is how it's done, you then have some kind of socioeconomic impact study done based on whatever the cost is deemed to be. I don't know what that would be in terms of, and I would imagine there would be different options, because I did read a document about when there was a discussion around, and it's on the port website, about putting a new cargo port somewhere, and there was discussion in that paper around using the quarry when it's completed. So in other words, the point I'm making is I would imagine there would be various studies that looks at different options for where to do it, how to do it, what the cost would be, what is the socioeconomic impact. Correct me if I'm wrong. Is
Correct,
this how it
100%.
will work? Okay, and if this is how it will work in terms of the government getting independent, credible studies done before a decision is made, tell me, Johan, would that then be an approach that is acceptable?
Well, I think we have the basis of the PPM plan they were the government from 2013 to 2021. They were hell-bent on having a cruise berthing facility. They had plans, they gave numbers. Where they messed up is they lied to the country and they misrepresented the facts by saying,
Okay.
No, I have to finish this point, because this is what was said. The country and the citizens would not pay anything for the port. Nobody builds you anything for free. All right? So you can't say, we're going to spend 200, 250, and you're not going to pay for it. Somebody always pays for it. And the only time the facts came to light was when the CEO of Carnival Cruise Line, Michael Bailey, came down here. He was on the Rooster talk show, and he said, oh, by the way, even though the premier and the deputy premier have said this is the reality of it. We're going to be charging $2.32 from each passenger, and we're going to take your passenger load that we estimate will be, at the time Cayman's maximum carrying a passenger number was 1.8 million. They were going to then move that from 1.8 to between 2.5 and 3.2 million. So I don't invent these things because I'm bored. I speak what I know to be the truth, because Michael Bailey was the first person and the only person to tell us how we were going to pay for it. Our government didn't. They said it was free and we would never have to pay. Anybody else in this room remember that? Or do I have dementia?
Okay.
Well, Marla, I apologize. I'm going to have to interrupt because
Okay.
he's obviously
Go
done a
ahead.
campaign trail now.
No, I'm a failed
One
politician.
second,
I'm not
one
campaigning.
second, 1 second, Johan, please. I think you said a lot to try to defend your position. I know that Marla is on island to also speak at the CPR conference against the port. So please allow me to.
I'm not speaking against or for anything on
Well, they
Honorable
asked you to
Deputy
come,
Premier.
so I'm only going based on the perception.
I do impartial, fact-based, independent
Assessment.
analysis
Okay.
based on the data.
Fair enough.
All right?
Fair enough. That's good.
Thank you.
So I don't know if the same position that's being taken today is going to be the same case when eventually we can't no longer import goods into the country.
Absolutely, we do have a problem with the cargo port.
Yes.
Yeah,
And we're going to eventually. You know what? The thing about it is, as difficult as I know how nitpicky Johan is, because he's actually my friend. We're basketball buddies, so I'm going to beat him up after the show, right? But
Can we buy tickets to watch?
no, it'd be really
Minister,
expensive.
just 30 seconds. The minister was crazy
does
enough
this
to
all the time.
invite me to serve as his chairman at the Airports Authority. So if I'm no longer the chairman of the Airports Authority after this didn't go as well as I thought.
Don't take this for anything else. That's why he's still there.
I would like to get an assurance from you, though, that if there is a yes vote, I mean, provided you are part
Elected
of the
again,
government, that these studies will be done and that,
Of course.
that Cayman won't
we've
make...
said that
Because
as
you're
the
the
governor.
best-run country in the Caribbean. You all can't disappoint me, right?
no,
'Cause
and
I'll
we-
tell the whole world if you do.
I'm sure that we will not disappoint you in that respect.
Okay.
As I said
Good.
when I first started, that I do think there needs to be a carrying capacity. I've said publicly about 5,000 times that particularly in Parliament when we were doing the debate, that I'm of the view that I don't think we need two pairs.
Okay.
I think that our carrying capacity can use one.
Okay.
And this idea of sitting down talking with the tender providers is illogical. What information they're going to tell me other than everything to say no? Because that's the business they're in. I'm not an idiot, right? And I've been there before, because what he said to you also is how many people supported the cruise pair referendum. The truth is I was a part of it. They asked me to come help them, right? The truth is the people signed, most of the people that they asked me for said, you have a right to make a decision, not because of the environmental impacts, so they can present most of the information. The truth is they were having problems getting enough people to sign the petition to get it triggered, and had to come to a grassroots person like myself to get their figures
boy.
together. But
Okay.
that's a different story. I want to
It's a
counteract
different
something
conversation
else.
altogether.
Okay.
That's the next
Because
panel.
you opened the door, my best friend, so we shall go down this road. The truth of the matter is, I've come to a very comfortable place in my heart about this, regardless of whether the people say yes or say no. The truth in history will provide. I'm telling you, folks, I was on, I wouldn't say on the opposite side, but I was just like him, holding accountable. I've been a minister for you, the good people of the Cayman Islands, for the last 4 years. I am telling you, if we do not build cruise infrastructure, there's going to be hundreds, if not thousands of people unemployed. And they're going to be what you call your generational Caymanians, the ones who don't always be in your business and your offices. And when they don't have work, the state is going to have to be one to deal with them if they go to the state for help. Most likely, it's going to be an increase in crime, and then this is not what we want. The truth is, we're in the business. I'm not suggesting that we increase it heavily. We can monitor that, but at least have the opportunity to sustain it. And you know for yourself, because you bid on a cruise pair option project before, that it is fundable, and it doesn't have to be at the taxpayer's pocket, because it can be an investment for many of you in this room that you can buy stocks and bonds on it to build it, because they will come, they will make the money back. Or even more than that, the tender money can pay for it, and you know that. But what we will do is try to throw out other figures to discourage people, when the truth, in fact, is nobody has said yet or discouraged the fact that the numbers are continuing to decline.
Oh, no,
so if the
of
numbers
course.
are continuing to decline, what are we going to do? Are we going to sit here and watch it happen? I thought this conversation was going to be about the how, not the if.
That's
but
what
we're
I'm
still
trying to
arguing the
achieve.
point of whether we should be doing it or not.
So, okay, let's wind back a little bit from the politics of it and into the how. We agree that before any major project goes ahead, whether it's the landfill, whether it's a cruise or cargo pair, whether it's whatever, we must do the studies, right? And these studies are done by experts who can inform the best how.
Correct.
Okay? So that assurance is important to give people that you're not going to go ahead with a project that is not based on studying both the costs and the benefits.
Correct.
All right? So thank you for that assurance. You mentioned not wanting to engage with a stakeholder that will likely be affected if a pair is built. Now, I want to just challenge you a little bit on that, because, first of all, let's not make assumptions about how they will feel. Just like you
Fair enough.
assumed I will come on Tuesday and say something that I may not necessarily
Well, I'm glad
say.
that you promised that you're not going to fight against the cruise pair.
I am impartial. I have no horse in this race. I can't vote in
That's
this
not how they're
country.
selling it in the media.
No, and
because
the media does all kinds of fun things sometimes. You know this, right?
Yes.
So let's focus on the facts. This is a major stakeholder, and I would like to think that any major decision, even if, like Johan just hinted, that it could possibly be the largest capital project ever in this country, I would hope that the government would have discussion with all the stakeholders,
course.
including the ones who are likely to be disenfranchised by a decision.
Let me take that back then, because that's not what I intended.
Okay.
Because we've had many conversations, even
me
before I
either.
became minister.
Mayor Cooper.
Let me just finish and you can have it. My amazing chief officer and the former minister and the Department of Tourism used to have many conversations with them. I've had conversations with them.
Okay, good.
Matter of fact, I'm very good friends with the person who's in charge. He's a strong character. I love him to death. He's kind of similar to me. But I know what their arguments are going to be. I know that naturally, in the best interest of not a couple thousand, millions of dollars, that their slant is going to be in favor of you don't need it. When truth and fact is, they themselves are concerned about the loss of revenue, right? I'm going to tell you how at risk we are right now.
You have numbers, right? You have data, right?
Yes, I can give you the data. I'm happy to provide them for
I
you.
still waited.
They,
Tell us the numbers.
what numbers for what specifically?
No, the impact, right? Because that report.
But is there a specific question that you were asking me
that
to
you
give
said
you the
you did
numbers for?
impact. Yeah. The
Which
impact.
one? What was it?
The impact on the people who will suffer as a result of the decline in the arrivals. That's what
You mean
you
how
were
many
saying.
people?
No.
I'm happy to show you on
Yeah.
what page. There's estimated to be over 3,000 Caymanians,
Okay.
Caymanians, not work permit holders, who are in the industry, which I know that you've read the whole report, right?
The cruise industry
In
specifically.
the cruise industry
Right.
specifically.
Okay.
Did you
Yeah.
read this report, ma'am?
I did.
Okay, so how did you not see the 3,000 Caymanians?
No, I'm asking you to share it with the audience, to tell us the number.
I did share it before to say everybody can read it, but I'm really trying not to get caught up in the games of things, right? But my point was that we're at risk right now where the tendering company, if they decided tomorrow to say, here what, we ain't doing any tendering anymore, our whole cruise industry shuts down. That's the power that the tendering company has. The truth is they shouldn't even have that. Not control over a financial services industry, a cruise industry that is so important to so many lives, right?
Yeah.
Why, if the cruise industry, if the tender industry was so important to things, why are they trying to sell it?
Because the owners are in their 80s, and that's what you do when you're old and you don't have success.
No, I think that they recognize the inevitability of things.
Okay, so one of these points I want to make before we go to the audience for questions is you all would have heard earlier the points made, and I'm talking about a very macro scale here, and I want to bring it down to the domestic scale, about how polarization and how this geopolitical situation we're in, which is heavily polarized and uncertain, is not good for anybody, right? I think there needs, and why I was making my point earlier, Deputy Premier, is I think we need to have more dialogue and more consensus building on this topic because there is too much polarization, there's too much division and misunderstanding, I think, on the,
I
you know,
agree with you
and I
wholeheartedly.
think that you cannot make a decision that's so big and so impactful for your country and for the people of your country without the dialogue of all the major stakeholders. Whether you do all in the room at once or one at a time,
Marla,
I think that we really need to
I agree
build
with you
consensus.
wholeheartedly. I've
Okay.
tried my endeavor best as minister to involve all sides of it. So many times. I'll give you an example. He did not want ACT to be on the stage today. And ACT is another side of it. I'm the government side. How many times have ACT, CPR, and ACT come together? I've invited them using your taxpayers' money to go to the tourism conference and sit down and ask all the relevant questions. They wouldn't come. I've asked for debates where, matter of fact, CPR, the CMR, the very controversial news network, asked for them to do the debate. They refused to do it. So I can tell there's people have their motives, and I'm fine with that. I have to tell you the truth of what I see. And if it doesn't happen, 5, 10 years from now, we're going to face this reality whether we like it or not. Just like how we're going to have to face the reality in respect to cargo. We're going to get there one day.
Yeah.
And are we going to ask the question about how much it's going to cost? If you don't trust any government at all, then I guess I can see your concern about the costing. My point is, the question is quite simple. Whether you want to be in the cruise industry or not, because if you don't have a facility, you're not going to be in it for much longer. After that question is answered, then a government has to still approve by going to Parliament the costings for it. So it's not like once you say yes, that it's a blank check to go and build this, over cost or non-environmentally friendly. There's a process.
Right.
And to be honest with you, they're very intelligent people in CPR that know that.
Right.
But yet they lead the conversation down a different direction because the intention is they don't want it at all.
Just to clarify, it's important that I say this for the record. CPR Cayman are not against cruise tourism or cruise berthing per se. What we want to understand are the details, because information and details matter. I think the minister...
So why not just say vote yes? If you're not against the cruise berthing,
Because
you're
I'd like
wanting the
to know-
details, hold the government accountable to the details.
Okay.
Let me just finish by saying this. Just let me finish by saying this. We are happy to have a conversation with the minister and his ministry team. You cannot have a conversation with ACT. This is what happened last week.
Okay, no.
But you got to
honestly,
give context. You got to give context, because you can't allow that to be said without the context. 2 representatives said we can accommodate 18,000 cruise passengers, 4 ships carrying 18,000 passengers a day, 5 days a week, effectively. But the question then leads to how?
Okay.
Where are you going to put them?
Stick a pin there, please. I want to switch to Joey for a very important question.
I was happy just being the pretty
because we have to go to Q&A. We have to go to Q&A, but I want you to help us quickly to understand, because you came from a situation where 400,000 people voted against something that eventually happened. How do you make this happen? Tell us a few critical ingredients to build consensus and to get people to agree to something that's done in a way that mitigates the risks that is best for the people of the country.
Yeah, so, well, first of all, again, that was an international petition, right? So, one of the things that we did when I was in the firm was to do a quantitative poll of the Bahamian people, right? And what we found was that there were all of these people outside of the Bahamas that really were unhappy with this idea, but Bahamians at 67%, if I remember the number correctly, was supportive of it, right?
Right.
But the other thing is, and I say this again, as a Bahamian who is not convinced of cruise, what was important for me and what we have seen in our engagement locally is that when Bahamians saw that we were serious about our commitment around including culture, that there is no development like Disney Lakauki at Lighthouse Point anywhere in the Bahamas, where we have Atlantis, which is sea-themed, and Bahamar, which is a luxury hotel, our 2 largest resorts in Nassau. This has 8 Bahamian artists who helped us build a facility that reflects the culture, their vision of the Bahamas, that puts on display their art, that includes handicraft vendors, right? That we got a Bahamian fashion designer to design overlays for Mickey, Minnie, and all the friends, right? With traditional Bahamian elements. Mickey is at Lakauki wearing conch on his shorts, right? For us to I think that there were Bahamians who may have still been skeptical along the way, but for us, what we decided was, 1, we're going to hire Bahamians to engage in the building and creation process, and 2, we were going to show Bahamians all along the way that we made these commitments in the Heads of Agreement, and that we either met those commitments or exceeded them. And what we've built is reputational capital around that.
And that Heads of Agreement probably is a document that people in Cayman should have a look at in terms of how you can
Just
get
search for
this.
it.
Yeah, how it's a public document.
Again, because we were starting from a place that we want people to know that what we were doing, that document is online for us.
Okay.
So if you want to go take a look at it, but I think, again, from our perspective, the Bahamian people have come to a place where, yes, cruise tourism is very important for us, and it drives our numbers. And as Ed Field said on our panel 2 days ago, without cruise tourism in the Bahamas, downtown Nassau is completely dead, right? It is a ghost town. And what we are striking the balance at, with at Disney is how do we maintain and engage with the Bahamian economy while also meeting some of the needs of the Bahamian people when it comes to what they want to see in their tourism product, right? Which includes Bahamian leadership, Bahamian ownership, Bahamian employment, Bahamian
Absolutely.
culture, those kinds of things, right?
Great. And all the positive spillovers while mitigating the negative one.
While doing our best to mitigate the negative one, but as I always say to people, it is sustainable development, right? There is a development element to it, right? And there needs to be for communities who, like I said, in South of Luther, who may not have had the investment that they needed to have. It's a tricky, I think, line to walk, but with consensus building,
absolutely.
thoughtfulness, it gets done.
Thank you for that, Joey. I think that's definitely the way that we need to move in the direction of here in Cayman. Dialogue and consensus building and making sure that the relevant stakeholders, the Caymanian people are looked after. I would like to take questions from the audience. Wow, we have lots of questions.
This
let's
is
see.
the most questions I
So
see
don't
on
make a
stage.
presentation. Just ask your questions
Unless you did
quickly,
something
please.
right.
We have one gentleman here, and then I guess I can't really see very well. Sorry, so I'll need your help, Jennifer. Yes, thanks.
Thank you, Marla. And thank you, panelists. I think what is missing from this discussion is that there are a number of factors that need to be considered beside the question of whether to have cruise berths or not. The most important is our dire need for a cargo port.
Yeah.
So I would suggest that anyone who has not read the report on our need for a cargo port do so.
Yeah.
Because we need to start moving pretty damn quickly on planning for a cargo port.
I did. I read that, and actually I was surprised to learn. I didn't even know that y'all do all of your cargo work at night so that the cruise passengers and that industry can use the port during the day. I think that's just nuts.
Yeah.
So I think that definitely we need to have some improved infrastructure around the cargo port. But
So
thank you. Sorry.
That ties in to the question of whether we have cruise berths or not.
Does it really tie in? Does it have to? I mean, I don't know.
It
I don't
could
know. I'm
or
not
it
an
could
expert
not.
on that.
That's a question. Some people were critical of the PPM when they integrated the two as one. That's a question to be decided.
Yeah, I don't know. It is a question.
It also has an impact on the east-west arterial and where that is positioned.
Correct.
Because if you read the report, there is a south-sound suggestion, which is nonsensical. There's a north-sound suggestion, nonsensical. There's an east-end suggestion, likewise.
Do you have a question, sir? We have lots of
Yeah.
hands.
So don't stop him. He's doing very good.
No, the question is it too late to call off the referendum? Because my sense is that 80% of people that are voting on a referendum question like that are not going to vote in an informed way. And this goes back to what Johan said about facts. We have an election coming up, and I think it would be much more productive for each of the candidates and parties to say on the political platform, this is our manifesto, this is how we're going to move ahead in a joined-up way, thinking about all these different things, and this is what we propose, and the voters vote on which plan they think is best. So my question is to the Minister and to Johan, do you think it would be better to take that approach of
What, to remove the question from the, I don't know that
remove
it's
the
even
question from the
possible.
referendum?
Yeah, because you'll have to,
you could potentially get a situation where a government's elected that
but it's
has-
non-binding, so.
yeah, but
it's
that has no
non-binding.
interest in building cruise berths, but then you have a yes.
But it's
Okay.
non-binding, so I appreciate the question. I don't know that we can answer that here because we don't
No,
have
it's- I wouldn't
constitutional
mind.
lawyers
I
on the
wouldn't mind to
panel.
answer. Thank you so much for your insight. I think that every time I hear conversations about this, I still have yet to hear somebody say, we are against building a cruise pier. We started the conversation to say, it's not if, but how. So if the government wants to make sure that they at least have the spirit in support of the people, he's right to make sure it's financially feasible, to make sure it's environmentally friendly,
Say that
and
again.
what location it needs to be at, right? I get all of that. You have to trust your government in some capacity to do those things and follow up later on. But right now, the decision is about whether you want to be in the cruise industry or not. Because I tell you, I really hope this doesn't come out to haunt us in the next 10 years. But if we do not decide to do this now, within the next 3 years, our cruise industry is going to suffer and stay over. Because we keep on forgetting that cruise helps fuel our stay over that we depend on so much. Ask him.
Okay.
The reason why they've spent so much money in their report and stay over on cruise is because that's where most of their marketing come from. They don't even have to spend as much money in marketing because their cruise does most of it for them. So I like your question, but I wouldn't take it off the ballot because the government, with something being so sensitive, still needs some level of comfort of hearing where the people are coming from.
I agree. I agree. I agree you need to know what your people want. Next question. There you are.
Just a quick point, Marla and Minister and Mr. Moxon. We're the lead consultant on Sunrise Adult Training Facility, on Lighthouse School expansion, and on the prison. I think the point that's missed, and to your point, Marla, is we follow the Green Book system of procurement in Cayman. There has to be a strategic case followed by an outline business case followed by a final business case.
Correct.
Which has all of the numbers in it. And every project, the 3 projects we're working on, the amount of time we spend with every stakeholder, doesn't matter whether they're interested in the prison, and certainly that's politically a tough project to get funded. The main thing is that it has to go through the process and consult everybody that's concerned. So I think the question, to provide the facts that Mr. Moxon's looking for. So
That's some important reassurance. Thank you for that, sir. I can't see whoever's the next hand. I really can't see too well from here.
Thank you very much. Another very impactful discussion. It was a great conference today. I have a 2-part question. One part for the Honourable Minister and one part for Mr. Gaskins. The first to the Honourable Minister. I think we are really over the barrel here with this cruise infrastructure issue. And we are over the barrel, not because of your fault, but for probably terms of government administrations, because we never had a proper plan, never, for the country. And well, one case I want to mention quickly for the Honourable Minister is that there was one road, a connector road, that the PPM government started when they were in government, that would connect Harbour Drive or North Church Street to Eastern Avenue.
Correct, yeah.
That road was started by the previous government, and the last 4 years in your government, it hasn't been finished. But now you're back with the PPM, so maybe you'll get it finished when you get
Sorry,
re-elected.
say the last part again?
It was started
Yes.
by the previous government,
Yeah.
and for the last 4 years, it's been held in abeyance, and that's really an important connector road.
I agree with you.
Thank you. But my question is about being over the barrel in terms of the financial plan. Because of government's heavy debt burden and $400 million being borrowed this past 4 years, we're kind of out of options except for the other creative models of financing. So as to Johan Moxon's question about how we're going to do this, and the moderator, that's a crucial question. So I wanted to ask you about that in terms of what this would look like in terms of the financing model. In your mind, I know you want to wait until you get a yes or no in referendum before you give us the details, but what do you think that would look like in terms of financing this, whether it's 200 million or 500 million? And the second part of my second 2-part question to Mr. Gaskins, if there is a yes or no vote on a referendum on the 30th of April, and I agree with Mr. Desmond King, it would have been good to take a referendum off, but the ballot has already been distributed, so you can't do that now. But if there's a yes or a no vote, how would your company, Disney Cruise Line, respond to that, and why?
That would probably be a shorter answer. So let's do yours first, because I think yours is longer.
That's definitely a shorter answer for me. So I'm public affairs. I deal with communications, CSR, government relations, right? If our VP of Port Strategy was here, he would be better equipped to answer that question, right? And as you all know, cruise itineraries are built out years in advance, okay? So I'm not equipped to answer that question right now. And I think that that's the
Thank
best
you,
and most
Joe.
honest answer
Appreciate
to give.
that,
Yeah.
Honorable Deputy Minister.
I
Yeah, sorry.
totally forgot what the question was now in respect to it, because it was...
The
Sorry,
question
not
was
gonna be-
around the financial aspect of the project.
Yes.
How would
Okay.
we deal with that?
Okay, so as I suggested before, that there's different models you can use, you know, where the government doesn't have to come up with anything. You can do PPPs, you can do create a local fund that can be funded. It all depends on what you're going to do. And I think that, as I was saying before, if you get a yes vote, that then empowers you to go off and say, okay, then what
And
is the
explore
carrying?
options.
Yeah, what is your option? What is your
Yeah.
carrying capacity?
Right.
Where do you want to go? Do you want 2 pairs? Do you want 1 pair? Are people adamant that they want it not in Georgetown, or can we leave it there? So the scope of what the costing would be, it's going to take time. If they say yes tomorrow, you ain't going to have a pair in 2 years. It's probably going to take about 2 years before you get a project even approved.
Yeah.
So it is hard to answer his question, but like the previous commenter made, there is
A process.
steps that you have to go through to be accountable to the people's money. It's not like it's just going to be thrown away. And I really, really love the Bahamas model, where they allowed it to be in the hands of Bahamians, and there was an investment fund, because you're going to get a return. Just like the tenders are making money, so can you as Caymanian
I can
investors.
support that 100%. That makes perfect sense.
Okay.
So we have 42 seconds, so I'm going to use those. I think based on how I feel and everything I heard from the panelists and from the audience today, I think a few important things. We need more dialogue, respectful, constructive dialogue. We need to build better consensus on this topic because it is a very divisive topic, but it's so important to the future of this country, whatever decision is made. We need to have a process that's respected in terms of the different options that might be explored, what might be the best option for Cayman given the constraints, and all of the things that you have to mitigate in terms of marine and environmental safety. So we have a process we have to follow. And the final one I want to add, and it came up in a discussion earlier when the presentation from Morgan Stanley around all of the cost cutting and budget cutting happening right now at Elon Musk's ministry in the United States. And he said, the reason they're doing this is because there was no accountability for the amount of spending that was taking place in the United States from their government spending. And that's the word I want to leave you with, accountability. There has to be accountability for whatever decision is made for doing it right for the people of the Cayman Islands, and holding government to account, from my experience, from what I've seen across the Caribbean, holding your government to account for what it says it's going to do and doing it right is the best way to make positive change for your country.
Marla, can I steal 10 seconds just to advise the public? If you go to the referendum at www.gov.ky/referendum, the government communications team have officially launched the data and information that you need to know as much as we know in respect to the referendum. Also, I'd remind you that these reports are available on the tourism website, and the previous report done by the progressives that still have almost 90% of the information and details are in it. So if you genuinely want data, you can find it.
Sorry, just to borrow
Thanks for
5
throwing
seconds.
that in. No,
Borrow 5
okay.
seconds. The Auditor General, Sue Winspear, recently left the island. She published a report at the end of February talking about transparency, accountability, and so on and so forth. I recommend everybody read it
Read her
to
report.
understand
You're
how
right.
we forecast, but we then take on projects that cost. We forecast for 3 years, but we take on projects that end up lasting 25 years of debt that isn't forecasted for. So before we jump into the enthusiasm, understand what we're dealing with, and government does not have a positive track record, not the minister. The government of the Cayman Islands does not have a positive track record in delivering any project on time, on budget, and to a satisfactory level.
My park will.
So,
My Sister Stratton Park will be.
so the and I'm having the last word here, guys.
Oh, really? I wanted 5 seconds. No, I just wait.
The Chamber of Commerce announced sometime last year a government accountability scorecard. And I urge you to support it. I urge you to read the documents that both gentlemen just highlighted and be informed about the decision, but hold the government to account for what it says it's going to do. I thank you for your attention. Gentlemen, thank you.
Marla.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Madam.
Thank you.